Coffee with the Editor is proudly brought to you by IRZ.
Phil, thank you so much for joining me for Coffee with the Editor this morning. You are from ECIC, which in long form stands for the Export Credit Insurance Corporation. Tell me a bit more about the company and the services that you offer.
Just going to give you a bit of background about export credit insurance, where it comes about. Over the years, many years ago, around the 1940s or 30s or 10s, countries were trading. Even during those old ancient times, countries used to trade with each other for obvious reasons. A country sees its competitive advantage, then it wants to use so that it can be able to sustain its economy. But the challenge then was that the recipient economies, buyers of goods, trade and everything, were not meeting their payment obligation due to other reasons that we're going to be talking about. Now, obviously, if you're not getting paid, one thing for sure is your cash flows are not. So you run out of profits, cannot sustain your business. Exporters, contractors started saying, how do I then recoup my money? Do I go to, if I sell to a country, do I go there straight to myself and say, listen, you owe me, pay me, or I just attach whatever that I sold, bring it back home? Challenge me. Legal framework of the country's sovereignty is not respected if you just come in. I just want to clear that. Now what they did then, they said, the contractors and exporters said, but government, you are as a government, you are the one that actually are able to help us in this regard. Go and speak to government so-and-so, to say so-and-so owes me, tell so-and-so to pay me. But the government said, well, fine, but maybe on the back, let's rather establish an export credit insurer, ensuring the credit for exporting goods and services, be it short-term or be it medium long-term goods and services. So that's how the concept of an export credit agent came about. So most countries around the world, developed and developing economies, do have an export credit agent to ensure eventualities of non-payment caused by political risk events or commercial risk events. That's how. So South Africa has had this export credit industry for many years, being established in 1950s, around there, where the previous company that used to reinsure with the government was actually a credit guarantee. Now the government in 2001 established the ECIC, the Export Credit Insurance Corporation, which is the official export credit agency of South Africa, which is 100% owned by the Department of Trade and Industry. Now our main focal point is to take a medium long-term view on the exports. And obviously when you talk medium-term, long-term view, you talk capital goods, capex, things that last longer, durable, things or equipment, whatever that can generate income. So that's our focus. So the government then said, okay, we're going to be privatizing this short-term trade, commodities, exports and everything. So the likes of, I think it's COFAS now, in South Africa, credit guarantee, they're still playing that space of short-term trade exports. We then looking at the medium long-term, where the private insurers are not able to actually take a longer view or long-term view. That's why we're here. The essence is that we follow our South African contractors and we follow our South African banks for starters. Although now we are now looking at not even looking at it, we are actually now insuring banks that are outside of South Africa.
Okay.
So we so to level the playing field, a bank anywhere around the world can say come to us, but provided the South African content there's exports from South Africa that are flown. But currently what we're having, asset to certain content is measured onto the loan that is provided by the bank.
So the ECIC is very different to an Exim bank.
Yes, we are different because with an Exim bank, they are able to fund themselves. We just provide an insurance paper.
So you would essentially be providing insurance guarantee
Yes.
to an Exim bank.
Well, yes, to an Exim bank, we can do that. Obviously, currently in South Africa, we don't have an Exim bank as such.
No.
Well, as we speak now, the banks now in South Africa are mostly dedicated teams within banks. Mostly the four, 5 banks in South Africa and the IDC as well, Development Bank of South Africa, almost 6 banks are aware of what we can offer. Now, our offering is simple. You are an exporter, you are a bank which is financing the exports, and you're not getting paid because of political risk events in a host country where you're exporting. You can come and claim.
And the claim process, is that complicated? Is that, how do you avoid fraud?
It comes to issues around the processes that we do prior to us ensuring that the policy of insurance is effective. Firstly, ECIC is signed up to anti-bribery laws.
Okay.
So we need to make sure together with the banks that all the projects that have been undertaken were not fraudulent. In actual fact, in one of our conditions, our conditions, it's not a condition, but one of our standing clauses in policy of insurance is that should we find out that there's been a fraudulent activity, that the exporter has been awarded this transaction, it's actually a project default. So somebody must pay us back our money. We just cancelled the policy of insurance because we were not aware. So we have signed up to those together with the banks. The banks obviously they do have those mechanics they got to. So we actually make contractors to be aware that listen, with the South African government, we have actually signed up to those anti-money laundering activities, even terrorism activities. So we need to make sure that our contractors, our exporters actually are aware that these are the things that we don't want to see. Otherwise, the project won't be banked with us.
Explain to me in a little more detail how you view political risk.
Okay. Political risk is divided in certain elements. Political risk is a war. If there is a war or civil disturbance to the extent that it impacts negatively to the country or the project itself not repaying, not to meet its debt obligation, we will then pay out a claim. Also, another element that is included in political risk is expropriation, nationalization. If a project is private, it's a private project, and where the government says, hey, listen, this is a project of a national interest, but there's a mitigating factor to it. If it's a private project and the government happens to nationalize it, obviously, when you've got an ECA involved in your transaction, the chances are very slim that your project may be touched. Because essentially the ECA is going to follow. Remember, it's an insurer. You follow what? You follow the wrongdoer. You follow wrongdoer, say, hey, wrongdoer, you have confiscated this, compensate me. Because I have paid out my financiers or my bankers a claim. But the government is made aware. The thing that I like now is that when an ECA is involved, all governments will be aware, whatever the host government will be aware that this transaction is insured by an export credit insurer, so and so. The chances of the government touching that asset become limited. So that's why mostly these medium long-term transactions are actually insured with ECAs around the world to mitigate that risk element. Not specifically that. There may be also issue of non-payment that may crop up as a result of insufficient hard currency in the economy of the country where there's no, because we finance this project, or the bank finances this project with US dollar as an international currency, but they can also do that with the South African rand as well. They can do that, but we're not allowed to do other currencies other than those two. If by any chance it happens that there's no hard currency in the system, then so now obviously There's lots of local currency, but you must have a truck full of dead currency to get $1.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're facing currency inconvertibility risk. Now you've got what we call change in law with regard to that, where the government would say, from now on, all hard currencies must come to me first. No outside offshore accounts. All of accounts should be in my country and rotated through the Reserve Bank or Central Bank. Then I will see how I prioritize my payments. It's a law.
Yeah.
You need to comply. Now it's a law of general application. But if it's a law specifically aimed at a specific project, it's a discriminatory act. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So we also fall under the changing law. Then we then have to periodically.
And how, I mean, you must have a room full of experts who look at the day-to-day possibilities of risk. I mean, if we look at Zimbabwe, I don't know how many projects you have in Zimbabwe. I mean, their continuous change in currency and their foreign exchange policy, that must impact what you guys do quite significantly.
In most cases, 100%. Must I say most cases, listen? But let me just say that each project is viewed on its merit. When you look at a project, you look at a project on its merit based on what? So to mitigate that risk of transfer restriction or currency inconvertibility, most projects that we do should be any hard currency of some sort. So we are able to bank on it. We'll talk about that later on this specific project we're going to talk about. Although we were ensuring a below rail aspect, but we had to be very creative in how we approach it. It's a deposit that is sold offshore, and that deposit is exported, and that deposit actually is using the insured line. So we got to think and say, no, the tariff that you pay, we need in this currency because you are earning an international currency. So we are financing this thing on international currency. We need also to have a size of what you process when you sell this commodity. Then we structure it accordingly. We need to have an account structure that is in place outside of the country where that specific tariff in that currency is utilized to actually repay the debt that finance the port and the rail.
In terms of mitigating political risk, do you also look out for environmental risk? So, the cyclone comes through or it all floods or do you consider that an act of God?
We classify those as force majeure events.
Okay.
Yeah, but we do not cover directly force majeure events. And not cover. Although political risk in some rights can be declared a force majeure event. But specifically, we do not provide insurance for force majeure. With regard to environmental and social issues, we are fortunate because all contractors, even all project sponsors, and even bankers that are financing these deals, they are aware that environment and the social issues are actually important aspect in order to bank a particular project. And obviously we observe the processes. How did you obtain the land rights, access to the land to build this, to execute your project? How did you have access to exploit the commodity? What processes did you follow? And then we categorize those. Once we see a project of this nature, we say, okay, it's a brownfields, could fall under a certain categories in terms of equator principle, IFC standards, World Bank standards, on environmental and social. We apply those standards in terms of evaluating a project. Actually, we look at everything. Nothing is left out. If we see something that is very sticky, small, in fact, as all the projects employ experts. I mean, you mentioned experts. All projects employ experts. You will have a marketing expert on a specific sector. You get a security expert on things of security, relating to security. You get insurance experts as well that are looking at those business interruption. So this project that we're going to be talking about, is actually had a lot of advisors. We've got an advisor with regard to the technical aspect of the transaction in terms of the railway line itself, as well as the port itself, there was a specific consultant into that, advising about port issues, availability of capacity availability, how, and then making sure that the stockyard is big enough to actually have a surplus. If ever there's a shortfall, how do we go up? Those are the things that we look at. You also would have a financial advisor. Someone will say, from a financial model, from a capital structure of the transaction. So all these other things, even an environmental. We had an environmental and social expert on this transaction. We need those things so that all of us are looking at the bankable project. Because if it's not bankable, it becomes difficult. Because you don't want to be sitting there with a white elephant, just halfway through finishing it. There's a lot of things that have not been addressed. And most of the things get pushed back. Sponsors are told, it's not my risk, it's not our risk, it's your risk. You take it. But the interesting part is that once all of us have done our due diligence and been happy how we then can go to our credit and say, this is the project that we have, and then these are the things that have been mitigated, and all of that. Just giving an overview. Each project, whether it becomes small or big, we look at it differently, based on merits.
All right, so I'm keeping our audience here in suspense because we're talking about rail, we're talking about mines, and we're talking about this project, but we haven't really spoken about what project it is.
Yeah.
So you are specifically referring to the Nacala Corridor, and it's incredible to hear the number of technical experts that you have involved in it. How long did it take you to do the due diligence for this project?
We actually joined an established team. I mean, we joined the lawyers, international law firm, together with other financiers on the transaction. They had already started negotiating this project in the year of 2014, late September. We as ECIC, we joined them together with our financiers in South Africa. We actually joined them around about May 2015.
Okay.
It took us a nice 3 years.
3 years.
Doing the traveling, doing the conference calls, engaging, asking questions, evaluating, reading, writing, debating. It was a rigorous due diligence process. I mean, you can see by its nature, I mean, a $5 billion deal, it's not a one-day deal. It's a deal that needs minds, all minds sitting around the table. I could count a delegation of about maximum 50, 60 people, including the sponsors, the lenders, on the table, the advisors.
So if you had to take a perspective of where the project is now, and the time that you as the senior underwriter got involved in the project, can you believe the success that the project has had?
Look, sometimes I feel like, did we actually make it? Because at some point in time you sort of feel tired, exhausted to see when is this thing actually. Because remember, you're responsible for your manager or your management will ask you, when are we getting this thing on the table? We are waiting, anxiously waiting. Because one thing that I liked about this project is that we had good sponsors, reputable sponsors. Their strategy was aligned in terms of how they want to approach it, and then we as the insurers and the bankers, the lenders will stitch you on some of the points, as I mentioned, environmental issues. But the interesting part, Philippi, is that this is a integrated project. Yeah. While the sponsors will say it's not an integrated, it's semi-integrated, we will say it's integrated. I'll tell you why. Okay. It's integrated because the line itself, it's serving the specific purpose of how to exploit the commodity on the ground. Without that commodity, there's no line. And even if we were to bring in passenger and freight rail into this whole picture, it couldn't absorb a $5 billion. Now, this project is bent on export of that commodity. Because without it, the lenders wouldn't touch it, the insurers wouldn't touch it. So we said, so there was a big debate there. Please, don't touch our commodity, our source, because you are not financing that. You are financing below rail in the port.
Yeah.
So your access is to that. But then if we're not financing, what security do we have? Then we started unpacking this project. Now this project was banked on the fact that the commodity is using the railway and the port to get to international buyers who will do whatever they want to do with that. Their forecast tonnage is 18 million tons per annum, which is made up of thermal as well as coking coal, almost 40-60 or 50-50. We know for the fact that countries want to sustain their economies and be able to, some countries produce steel and some others are good in fabricating steel, and even like South Africa, we have good to fabricate steel. Now they need coking coal to harden the steel. If there's no coking coal, the steel. Now with thermal coal, obviously power plants and other uses of those. Okay. So how we structured this transaction was to say you are selling this thing to offshore buyers and you're selling it in US dollars. Please make sure that that portion of the tariff is utilized to take care of two things: fixed cost and operating cost.
Okay.
Now, fixed cost is to service the debt that we are insuring. Operating cost, obviously, to take care of the maintenance aspect, the operations and management of the project itself. You can convert those monies into local currency, it's fine. But we need to be mitigating this currency convertibility and transfers on that. That's why we were lucky. The other aspect which was helping us was the fact that the sponsors were backstopping the project. In a sense, they provided guarantee to say if the tariff is insufficient to cover the op cost and the fixed cost, we will top it up. We look at the financial strength and the credit, and we look at their history, how they are looking going forward, and we were very much comfortable because their credit rating is above board, and the way they handle their business, it's superb. It's a credit one can take and say, this there is, I can assume. That backstopping, actually, that's what it makes it, we call it a hybrid project. Yes, it's a project finance, we rely on the cash flows, but backstopping it means that we're getting a guarantee to actually top up all the debt obligations and the operating cost obligations. So that on its own make the project bankable. Because we as the lenders or the insurer, we didn't want to be exposed to commodity prices. As you know, commodity prices are cyclical. When I did my economics some years back, many years back, they used to convince us, textbook to say, you know what, economics plan comes after 5 years, it comes back after 5 years. Now today, economics plan comes every day, not cyclical anymore. So we had said, we don't want to be exposed to that risk because we're not, you said we shouldn't touch your commodity, we shouldn't touch your exploit.
Yeah.
We're not touching it, it's just, but we don't want to be exposed to it. It was a sticky point, I must say. Sticky point. Should I say deal breaker?
Yeah.
But eventually, the sponsors agreed to say, look, we will backstop it. But in the first time when we started negotiating, they were giving it to us for only a limited period. The project taking a 10 or 13 years, they were saying, no, we can actually release, you must just release that backstop after 5 years, from financial close up to 5 years. Now we said, no, stop it. What happens to the remaining period of 8 years? So you're forcing us to take commodity prices. Other financiers were sticky with regard to the fact that the product itself that they are producing is part of, is an emission, environmental emission. They don't want to touch it. Those are the things that we were grappling with, but eventually they were bent, they were agreed, price raise, and the sponsor said, we'll backstop you. And then we were also, one other challenge is that the host countries, being Malawi and Mozambique, actually have very stringent foreign currency controls. You're generating hard currency. Whatever that you're selling from hard countries, you must have all your accounts here. Hard currency, dollars account must be here. Now, one of the sticky point was that we needed to speak to as lenders and insurers, we needed to speak to the government. Obviously, the central banks, they've got, because of the fact that both governments, Malawi and Mozambique, had a strategic importance and viewed this project as important for their economies. They actually came to the party and agreed on an account structure where you can have offshore accounts. So they eventually agreed because they realized, remember Malawi is a landlord economy, they need access to the port. So what happens? It's shorter to go to the Nacala port for them, especially Malawi, south of Malawi. So what they said, okay, we need to make sure that we are able, whatever that we produce, we're able to export. I mean, it's an agriculture-based country, so they needed to export whatever that they produce on the ground. So now, and then also the government, in their concession agreement, they had said, you sponsor, you got an obligation. Your obligation is to look at the social aspect and the economic aspect of it. There were several lines in Malawi that were dilapidated, railway lines, and then they insisted and agreed to say, you will refurbish this line that goes south and that connect the Nacala railway line so that our producers got access to the port. The sponsors agreed, realizing that it's a social as well as an economic. So it's a win-win. No winner takes all here. The government of Malawi benefited, the government of Mozambique benefits through taxes and through royalties, employment creation, a spillover effect becomes a positive. So both governments realized the strategic importance of this project, together also meeting the strategic importance of the project sponsors, because they needed to sustain their commodities, because they are in the short-term commodities. They need to sustain that, because if their resources and reserves deplete, they're out of business, so they need to sustain. Coming back to the other financiers in the project, obviously, the likes of African Development Bank.
Because you weren't the full underwriter, were you? ECIC didn't underwrite the full amount.
No, we didn't underwrite the full amount. Actually, ours was up near 7% to the total debt.
Okay.
So we were thinking about 400 million. The total debt was in the order of 2.7, 2.9.
But it is a big step for a South African corporation such as ECIC to have even been involved in the project to begin with.
I must say, Philip, I become amazed when countries are saying to us, we South Africans are still a developing economy. When I look at myself and see a country that is fully developed because of the level of knowledge that we have in terms of how to be able to compete with other countries that are developed. We are there.
Yeah. And
we shouldn't look ourselves as, but we actually are making a difference, as you have said. I mean, ECIC, being in existence for a period of about 18, 19 years, we've done larger projects, mostly in the 400 million. Okay. In the 400 million, other sectors as well. But I must say, that little bit of impact of a small amount, $400 million to the export of goods from South Africa, actually, does make a difference in terms of sustaining jobs. And obviously, creating jobs to the hosting economies, very, very much important for us.
Yeah.
And I must say, the other financiers to this deal, being Japanese entities, actually, they stand to benefit because their sponsors is one of theirs. They come from Japan, and Japan needs to obviously sustain its economy, and you can only do that if you play your cards very well and manage your economy. Because the country will rely much more on steel, we need to sustain our economy so that.
Yeah.
So they took a sizable chunk, about 1.5 billion, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
Yeah, 1.5, 1. So it's took quite a sizable chunk because they realized that's strategic important. Everything is driven to the strategic. How do you want to see ourselves in the next? How do we play a role as ECIC? Because we as ECIC, what we said to ourselves is, we are doing this for our country, for our economy, and you must see, once the repayment starts happening, hard currency comes back to us.
So what are the repayment terms? I think it's quite a long period.
Yes, that's where we play, because the short-term insurers won't be able to take a 10-year view or 13-year view. That's where the government said, let's establish a dedicated ECA, officially established ECA, to actually look at the the long-term, the longer terms,
Yeah.
as other ECs around the world are able to do 18 years, 15 years, depending on the sector as well.
So you've got the concession is 25 years, and your payment term is 13 years. So that ends last payment 2031.
2031. Okay, let me explain a bit about the concession. When the sponsors approached the government, they obviously agreed on a 25-year for their commodity.
Yes.
But now, over and above that, there were also concession agreements for the railway line and the port.
Yes.
Now you can just imagine how they did that. They didn't do 2 concessions, one for Malawi, one for Mozambique. They actually did 5 concessions. Earlier on, it was a greenfields railway line, brownfields railway line, and it's bits and pieces, right? So now each one they had to do is develop each concession. They divided those concessions into 4. They got 2 concessions in Malawi, 2 concessions, rail concessions in Mos, and the other one, the 5th one, is a port. Now you can imagine. Imagine the legal framework of both countries. Mozambique, Portuguese law; Malawi, English law.
So how did you actually bring it all together?
You know, when we first joined,
Yeah.
my legal advisor at the time, we spoke about it. He said, how did they do that? Why did they do 4 borrowers, and then they're making this thing complicated? Why don't they just consolidate into one? The legal advisors sent to us, they said, no. If we were to do that and cancel this thing and start all over again, it would be a long time process. So what we needed to do, because we read the concession agreement, my legal advisor read the agreement, some of the terms and conditions were not aligned. So now when we didn't ask the sponsors to say, hey, sponsor, you actually negotiated this. Go and speak to government so that at least we can, sort of harmonize this concession agreement. We are aware that you don't want to go back and renegotiate, because you're not going to renegotiate these things, or maybe cancel them and start them afresh. Other things will be at play, and then it will make it difficult to bank this project. Eventually they did. While there were certain things that were not 100% clean, but at least that harmonization of other terms and conditions, it was actually good to do. One thing that I can tell you about it, what is interesting, is that both governments actually, early back then in 2000, they actually agreed. They sort of made an agreement. They made an intergovernmental agreement back in 2000 and say, this is how we want to see this infrastructure. And we need to agree. We need to have a committee in place, so that committee, if there's a dispute, you can just imagine the spillover effect. If there's a dispute, there's a problem in this country, obviously it will spill over to that country. And it will have a domino effect to the whole process up to the port. So that on its own obviously gave comfort to the fact that, you know what, these governments are aligned strategically in terms of they want to see the country going, where the country is going. That was a plus point for us. And the other factor is the fact that if the other government was to pull the plug on a concession agreement, what happens?
That gets complicated.
That gets a bit complicated, because now what we say, you will have to compensate us.
But that would be the government that would have to compensate.
Yes.
Okay.
But
there comes the CPA.
Now, do you have a $5 billion in your pocket now? Or $3 billion?
$5 billion in their pocket right now.
But I must say to you, that was the interesting part. Even the government realized the importance of saying, if we were to do this, we'll have to do a termination payment. If we were to do this, compensation payment. If there was going to be a shortfall in this, we'll have to come into play. But then the sponsors said, okay, if there's a shortfall, then we'll have to pay it. So there was all these other things. Without being technical, that's how the project went. For ECIC, being there and with hearing other lenders' view, other ECA's views, for me and for the ECIC was an eye-opener.
So it's given both yourself and ECIC a good introduction into the rail environment, and especially the relevance of rail in a pit-to-port strategy, even crossing borders and intergovernmental relations. What was your view on Nacala Corridor versus the Center Line?
This project is driven by the strategy of the sponsors. Now, the sponsors were using the Center Line to go to Beira, but Beira port capacity is limited to up to 6 million tons. And Beira port is not a deep water port, so it cannot accommodate bigger vessels. Now, a bigger vessel is going to stop there, and then whatever that you're exporting, you must take with smaller vessels or tugboats or whatever, load it there. It's quite an expensive venture. Now, what they did then, they explored other ports alongside the shore of Mozambique. Nacala became the preferred, actually, was a solution provider, because the port itself, it's a deep water port, it can carry bigger vessels. Now, looking at it, and then if you've got a source that can last you 45, 50 years, but now you're just mining 6 million, how long are you going to be there?
Long time.
You're not taking advantage of the market. Now, the strategy for the sponsors is that the more I do economies of scales, when I do the economies of scales, I can do 18 million tons on the Nacala port. That maximizes my return. So that resource lasts for it. But now it makes economic sense to actually use the Nacala port for the sponsors rather than using the Beira line. You can see when it's flooded. When it's flooded, it's not a good sight. I've been there twice on the Beira port and route up north of Mozambique. You see waterlogged houses, and imagine how do people survive? So because the level of it is shallow, not deep. So that's what they took an advantage of the Nacala port to say we're able to maximize our return if we do 18 million tons of exports of this commodity per annum, and then rather than using the Center Line, because now our returns are become limited.
Are you looking to get involved with other rail projects?
We hope to be lucky as well to be involved in other rail projects and port projects, and we hope that the bankability aspect is actually, when people do want to do these deals, obviously need to do their strategy as sponsors, and the government also need to level the playing field, to be on board and be able to assist in whatever way to make, for example, South Africa, the continent,